We shall see. Again, working on getting Zander on here in a second here. Hopefully we're able to do that. And we're able
ready, Big Phils. I'm ready, brother.
Gotcha, big guy.
I don't think you can see me on your makeshift setup today.
No, I got you. I see you now. I got you.
Are you ready for me, or you want me to give you a couple minutes?
No. We're good. We're good,
right,
dude.
Brother.
No. Zander, let's do this, man. Some of your quick takeaways from the first week of practice and the first week of training camp for the Eagles.
I think it's great to hear what's going on with the offense. I know it's just training camp and you don't want to overreact, but the reality is you're going to learn one thing or the other, whether they look good or they look bad. And I think obviously it's a positive thing to have the offense looking good, especially coming off the OTA session. And you have a new coordinator. You know, you're coming off a bad end of the season last year. It's a very positive sign, I would say, to hear that Jalen Hurts is comfortable. He looks good out there. He's delivering the ball well. I heard some reports as well today. He looks healthier. He's moving around, but that doesn't mean he's running more. It just means his mobility looks better, and that's a very positive thing. So delivering the ball on time, on target, it really seems to be all good from an offensive side of the ball. I think the fear is that you're seeing some of the defensive side of the ball be, maybe that isn't as good, kind of what we feared a little bit. You obviously haven't learned much about the line with no pads on yet, but a lot of young talent, but how good is that talent going to be this year? I think that's a big question coming into the year. I thought it was positive today, Big Sills, you heard. I don't know if you were able to catch up with it with your internet being out, but Nolan Smith looked good today. He got around the edge a couple times. Jordan Davis blew up a couple plays on the inside. So those are the guys you really want. Like Jalen Carter, I don't need to hear that he looks good. Like I saw it, Jordan Davis, I need to hear it. Nakobe Dean, I need to hear it. Nolan Smith, I need to hear it. And you're hearing a lot of that. And then the other thing I would take away from camp so far is Quinyon Mitchell. I mean, you get a guy like Vic Fangio who says openly, I'm going to throw as much at these players as I can early and often. And, by all reports, Quinyon Mitchell has handled everything with ease, doesn't look like a fish out of water, comfortable, right side, left side, slot cornerback, clamped A.J. Brown, Big Sills. I mean, that's very positive to hear from your first-round cornerback. So, I don't want to be the, I'm not saying let's make a parade, make our parade plans, but definitely good things coming out of training camp so far.
Some takeaways from what Kellen Moore said on Saturday.
Not a whole lot. Go ahead.
Well, kind of in a way. He broached on some of the more important things. What was your takeaway when he said and asked the question about, when asked on protection, he said, it's going to be kind of a cooperation between everybody on the offensive line, and it's really going to come down between Cam Jurgens, and also it's going to come down to Jalen Hurts, which means you're putting more on the table for Jalen Hurts to have to absorb besides the new terminology, besides the new route trees. And some of the things that you say with that is, okay, is that more for Hurts or is that more for Jurgens? In my opinion, they're there to help Cam Jurgens more than Jalen Hurts because Hurts has been in there. He has seen it. That's a concern for me because if you've got a guy who can't make those signal calls yet, and you're going to do that with the relying of the quarterback, that's one thing Jalen hasn't had to do for 2 years, and now you're asking him to do that because you have inexperience at the center position. I think that's something to keep an eye out. Jurgens is not going to help Hurts. Hurts is going to help Jurgens until he gets acclimated.
Yeah, and that's fair. And I think they're going to – I hope they start to put more of that on Jalen Hurts because I think it will make him better in the long run. But it'll be interesting to see. You're right. I mean, how all that stuff plays out. But, I don't know. That's one of those things you can't really tell until they get in the games and you see how they handle it. But, I thought he said some other good stuff too outside of Cam Jurgens and Jalen Hurts and the pass protections and all that stuff. But, the Saquon Barkley comments I thought were pretty interesting, how he's going to use the running backs in the offense. I thought that was pretty interesting. And then the mismatches, Dan. I love to hear that the mismatches he's creating with the wide receivers, right? I mean, before we ever heard Kellen Moore spoke, right here on this show, you were saying you should be moving those receivers around, putting them in the slot, giving them different looks, confusing defenses. And he echoed that a lot in a big way. So, and you're seeing it. You heard Avonte Maddox talk. He said, I've never seen this much movement with our wide receivers. We got Devontae in the slot, AJ. They're moving all over the field, and it's much harder to cover. And that's exactly what we wanted to hear. So I thought that was very positive. Wide receiver 3, he kind of had a couple thoughts on that, but nothing big. And then Grant Calcaterra sticking out as the tight end too is interesting too, and he made some comments on that.
Yeah, I mean, to your point on Barkley here, see, this is why I say this to you, Zander. When he's saying that Barkley is going to be kind of a week-to-week option, it creates great versatility versus opponents, which means this is why I was saying the other day, Zander, if you got a guy getting 950 yards and he gets you 10 touchdowns rushing and he pulls out another near 500 yards in receptions and you got 1,400 yards and you got a guy that's playing 14 games, let's say that number averages out to be 100 yards a game, you're going to get 100 yards and you're going to get 15 touchdowns. So you're going to get 100 yards a game out of your running back position in total offense and a touchdown a game. And he's not Devontae Smith or A.J. Brown. What an added component to your offense, and what a mismatch that is when you're able to use him a lot like that. And I figure one of the things that he was talking about was trying to figure him on mismatches week in and week out. 1 week he might rush the ball more. The next week he might be more of a proficient pass receiver. And I think that's how his role is going to be defined this year. He's not going to be a bell cow back getting the ball 20 times a game. You know what I mean? He's going to be a guy, 1 week he gets 20, the next week he gets 7 carries, but he gets 8 catches for like 75 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think it's going to go week to week like that.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing. I mean, we don't need the NFL. I mean, you're going to have different opponents, different defenses, different looks, and to have a guy that's willing to be malleable and do different things with different players, I think is an important thing. I mean, that was part of our problem last year, right? I mean, you ran the same damn thing every time, no matter who you played, who was on the other side of the field, who was healthy. It didn't matter, and that cost us. So to hear that, I think is a positive thing from the coordinator for sure.
Absolutely. And what you were talking about with AJ and Devontae, and he was saying, as we said about the slot, you're going to see a lot of mismatches. And AJ and Devontae, they're going to be put in positions, and we're going to do a lot of movement. I got to tell you something. No disrespect to your co-host. Ben, I don't think he understands motion. I just don't think he gets it, because you get it. And to me, when you put a guy like, hey, let me ask you this, Zander. If I put pre-snapped, I put A.J. Brown in motion to the right and to the strong side of the field, you're not going to send a guy out there to cover that guy?
I know.
And you're going to have a complete mismatch out there on the right side? You're telling me that doesn't help that play have more opportunity of success? I get John's talking about the end result of the play. I get it, but that's half of it. The reason why Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay and Andy Reid use motion is to put players in position to have that play have success, or give it a chance to have success by creating easier routes and mismatches. And that's why I think I think they're replacing, Zander, the RPO with motion.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that. I mean, I think, I agree with you on motion, and John was a little bit too hell-bent on the results type of aspect of it. But I think where he really pushed back on me was, it's not going to help Jalen read the defense, which is the big question on the quarterback. And, I think that's debatable too, because like we just said, if you move a guy out in motion and you see somebody follow him on defense, that tips the hand of what the defense is going to do. John disputes that and says that's not going to do anything. It's not going to help Jalen Hurts. That's his opinion. And maybe I am wrong. I'm willing to be wrong. I'm okay with that. But, there's no doubt that motion helps offenses. Look at the best offenses in the NFL. Every last one of them is using motion, and we were terrible at it last year. Now, where John is right is we won 29 games out of 32 or whatever, and we were bottom 5 in motion. So it's not like you can't be successful without it. But when teams adapt, and
I think you become more predictable without it.
Well, and especially when you have a quarterback that's now been seen by the league. When the first 29 of 32 games of Jalen Hurts' career, he wins, but the next, 10 10 are bad. Well, it's because the league is going to adjust to him and his skill set and what he can do. And that's what makes the NFL hard. I mean, you have defensive coordinators studying everything he's doing. So it's an adjustment, and I'm okay. I'm good with it. I think the motion is going to be a great aspect. And by the way, we have great players for motion. It's not like we have stick figures out here. We have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, Saquon Barkley. These are all guys who are going to flourish in that type of an offense. And to me, it's a no-brainer to use it often, and to do it, to make the most out of the mismatches you can create, for on the defense, on who's covering who on defense and offense. It's a big part of it. And I think it's going to be effective this year.
Think about it too. When John says that it doesn't help Hurts, well, I think that's not true either. And I'll tell you why. If I'm a quarterback and I see what motion does by moving a safety or a linebacker over, and I'm not proficient in reading defenses, doesn't that teach you as a skill set? Me moving that Y over, move that safety over there, and doesn't that help you in your progression and learning? Watching what motion does when it comes to your development of being a progression reader. If I move one guy here, or I move my head here, or I do this pre-snap, all of those things I think are fundamental tools that Kellen Moore is trying to put in the offense to help him be a progression reader. It's like this, Zander. They're putting those wide receivers in. They're giving him a crash course in how to read defense using motion to give him some keys. Look, if we move this wide receiver across the middle of the field, look what happens with the free safety. He follows. Well, what happens? You come backside on a slant pattern to Goddard, coming up the numbers here. All that stuff, I think, helps you in your development of reading because, I see what they're doing. Now I know why that guy does that. And it's not a deep third route. You have to have a smaller route. That's why you go to a 5-step drop instead of all those things, in my opinion. Motion helps, in my opinion, the development of your quarterback. He's right when it comes to the result. John's looking at the end result of the play. Well, hey, look at how many games they won. That's not how this league is, dude. Every single player has to adapt his game and has to adjust his game and has to evolve his game. And if you don't and you stay pat, you become Carson Wentz.
Absolutely. So I think you're spot on through and through about the whole thing. And I understand John's point, but that doesn't mean I agree with it. But I can understand it, and I'll respect his opinion on it. And I think it's a little short-sighted. I think it's lacking a lot of context, but that's all right. Teach his own.
Absolutely. A little bit on Nick today. And, to go back a little bit on Kellen and what you said, he spoke for 12 minutes. You think that was by design, not to put him too much out there and in front to let everyone have a runaway notion that, hey, guess what? Sirianni, I think that things are sounding better and looking better. You know why? Because he's less involved. I think that's why it seems that there's a good attitude out there right now. And to Nick's side of this, he's doing the things to make the environment successful, eating a little crow. Nick's got to do this. If Nick decides to eat a little crow, Zander, and he eats some pride in this, it could be beneficial to his long life as an Eagle head coach, and it could be to the success of the football team. He's got to eat some ego here. Sticking your head into fucking position meetings, it's just ceremonial. But if you stay out of the way and the players know that, but you're there for them to come to, and you're there to, if you have a problem, you're kind of creating another vehicle for him, and he's adapting into the CEO role. We'll see when things aren't going well, how it responds. But again, like I said, if we're going to go off the first 10 days, all right. I think he's doing all the right things is what I mean.
I do too. And I'm not, look, the team looks better and things seem to be, in a better spot than they were at the end of last year. And I'm not going to knock Nick Sirianni for that. I mean, I get what you're saying. Maybe it's because he's more removed and the coordinators have a bigger say. Maybe, but I'm not going to use that as an opportunity to say, oh, it's because of that. I mean, look, what happened last year was not obviously good. I think Nick recognized that, which is a good thing in itself. Most people's egos are too big to ever get to that point of recognizing that, a different role for themselves might benefit. and it's benefited. So I think it's a good thing for Nick. I mean, like I said before, if this team succeeds, Nick is not going anywhere. Whether he's a CEO, head coach, the offensive coach, if this team succeeds, he is not going anywhere. So he did something that hopefully helps the team this year, puts him in a better position to win more ball games. I think it did, and we'll see how it plays out. But I'm not going to knock Nick. I think he's doing a good job. I think he's handled the talking points and the what's going on since last year pretty well. I think he looks a lot more refreshed at the podium. I don't know if that's just me, but he doesn't have those big bags under his eyes. Like he kind of looks like a 40-year-old again, like or however old he is. He doesn't look like he's 15 years his senior. So I think that's a good thing, and hopefully Nick understands his role enough where he can be beneficial for the team this year. But we're like you said, we'll see when shit hits the fan, right?
Tyler Steen being injured and being out for a little bit, the impact you think that has on the right guard position? They're going to say, Sirianni said this morning that Becton is going to get some looks over there at right guard, and they're going to start swinging guys in and out of there to see if they can cover that until he gets back. But there's another blow. You lose Cooper DeJean for a little bit. Now you're losing Tyler Steen, who you're counting on to man that right guard spot. Big loss there.
Impact on Tyler Steen is big. Impact on the right guard position is next to none. You know why? Because we haven't seen anything from Tyler Steen. So to say that we lost a guy or that our team is going to be worse is just premature. I mean, we might be better with Tyler Steen not being in there. We might be better with Mekhi Becton being the right guard. It's not like I lost Landon Dickerson and you're downgrading. Now, like I said, from a Tyler Steen perspective, yeah, you're going to want to get back out there as quick as you can, young man, because your job is not insecure yet, and it's tough for him. I mean, I'm not sold on him. We saw him in one game last year, and he got absolutely demolished. Really has never been a right guard in his career, so it's a big switch for him. Not as big, not as powerful, not as high of a caliber of a talented type of player like Mekhi Becton is, meaning, he didn't have that high draft grade, doesn't have that pedigree. And I don't know. I almost feel better about it because if Mekhi Becton is good enough to play right guard or he understands how to play the position, I would almost prefer him there. We need better pass blocking this year. And if you're telling me that Tyler Steen is going to be a better pass blocker than Mekhi Becton, I'd have a hard time believing that, especially on the inside.
I heard a couple players. I want to hit on a couple guys here. Boy, I'll tell you what, Zander, I had not heard Avonte Maddox talk. I like him.
He's good.
I really do. He sounds like a smart player, a team guy. He rocks with his teammates. He's there. He goes, I'll play any position you want me to play. I just want to do whatever I can to help my football team. The younger players have asked me questions. Obviously, it's all health with him. And he was asked a question. Avonte was saying, hey, man, I'll tell you what, I can't wait to watch what this offense is doing. These guys are moving people around more than any time I've ever seen, and that's going to be interesting to watch. And, again, this thing comes down to really his health, but I see why they brought him back and why they like him. Man, if they can get him on the football field for 14 or 15 ball games, what a massive deal that will be because he can play. And I like him on my roster. Again, he's a paper mache, and I get it, and I don't want to get too ahead of myself here. I'm going to talk about another guy getting on the field here, but boy, I really like listening to him.
Yeah, but Dan, I hear you, and I'm with you, but the knocks on Avonte Maddox have never been about who he is as a player, his smarts, or even his talent. He's, quite frankly, when he was on the field for a while, he was one of the best slot cornerbacks in the entire NFL, but the guy can't stay on the field, and I hear you, but you're almost at the point with him where if you go into the season with him as your main option or as penciled in as a starter, you're setting yourself up for failure without a safeguard. And I think that's where the Eagles are with him. It has nothing to do with the player, the smarts, the talent. It's that he can't stay on the field. And like you said, paper mache. So it's never been about, him not checking all the other boxes. And that's part of it in the NFL. If you can't stay on the field, then you're not a good player. And he is a good player, but he can't, and he struggles to stay on the field. So the Eagles are looking at contingency plans. They're looking at Cooper DeJean. They're looking at other players who can play that position, even Quinyon Mitchell, because they just can't trust Avonte Maddox is going to be there when they need him the most. And that's what you need out of a player. Like you just said about the linebacker position, I'd rather take a guy off the street who I know I'm going to get 17 games out of than Nakobe Dean, because he's never proven he can play on the field for 17 games. Same thing with Avonte Maddox. So that's the knock on him, and it's a completely fair knock.
Do you think that's why Bradberry's still on this football team, is that he played 1,051 plays? Is that Vic can count on him? Because at the end of the day, you got inexperience back there in the secondary. But here's my problem with Bradberry on the team. I mean, you've got every coach saying that the transition's almost impossible. You got the coordinator saying he doesn't think he can do it, in so many words. You got, what's his name today, Nick, saying, hey, you know, he's going to get his role. He's going to get his opportunity. He's a heck of a guy. All coach kind of speak, which wasn't really any kind of cement or any kind of credence where you could like put a foundation to, because, you know, he's just kind of just being positive. You know, I look at Bradberry and I'm like, I just don't get it, man. I mean, are you going to go young and play the young guys? Or are you not? Are you nervous about the young guys? Why is this guy here still? And you're putting him in positions that you're taking reps away from guys who could be getting really quality reps. I'm still not getting that. Now, it's got to be, and maybe you disagree, it's got to be because they're not sold on the young guys yet. Why would he be here? What other reason would he be here? You're not trying to trade him. Stop with that. Not you, but you're not trying to trade him. You're not. Nobody's going to trade for a $12 million guy who was one of the worst graded guys in the league last year. Nobody is. They're going to wait for him to get cut. So you either don't believe in some of the young guys, not because they're not good, but because they haven't played yet, or you think this guy's going to have a bounce back and he's going to be an integral part. You're going to have a $12 million backup corner on your team, Zander? That's not Howie Roseman like. Zander, can't hear you, brother.
The one thing I think you're missing in your evaluation is Howie Roseman is a stubborn GM. And while I understand that it's plausible they're keeping him because they're not sold on the young guys, it's also very plausible to say that Howie Roseman overplayed his hand on James Bradberry, and now he's going to sit and wait and see how training camp progresses. I mean, Dan, look, the guy in Minnesota, obviously, rest in peace to the one guy who passed away, the cornerback. I'm blanking on his name. Shoot, I feel bad because he obviously just passed away. I'm blanking on the name. If someone wants to help me in the chat. And then they also just lost another guy to a torn ACL early in training camp. That's two cornerbacks down on that roster. The LA Rams, they just lost a cornerback to an ACL. Look over in Dallas. They just lost Sam Williams, torn ACL today, out for the season. I mean, injuries happen a lot in camp, and the more those happen, the more valuable James Bradberry becomes to another team. I'm not saying they would do it and pick up the salary. I get it. But maybe there's a deal that's worked. I'll give you a 5th-round pick and you eat half his salary and we'll take the other half. Something like that. And I think Howie's holding on. Kyrie Jackson. Thank you, Mr. International. Sorry to, for him and his family. For me forgetting that name, I feel that's fucked up. But I think you can't overstate that. Howie might be waiting for that because he's stubborn. And part of that's what makes Howie good is that he's stubborn. But he's very stubborn, and there could also be a part of that is involved in this where they're holding on to Bradberry to get the prize, whatever that might be in the future, and it might never come. And if that happens, then you're left with a decent player who, John's right. Vic Fangio might look at him and be like, if I'm playing the best guy available, he might be the best guy available.
I get it.
Yeah. So look, I mean, I hear you. Maybe they're not sold on the young players and that's why he's here. But to be honest, I think it's more likely that Howie has been waiting, holding out, wanting to get something for James Bradberry. He hasn't gotten it yet. And he doesn't want to lose. Howie doesn't like losing. And that's a great trait, honestly, to have in a GM. It's a great trait to have for anybody that's a leader. They don't like to lose. And Howie doesn't like to lose. So I think he's holding on to Bradberry to try and get something out of him. Or they have other plans for him. Or you're right. It's one of the two.
Kobe Dean spoke, and I didn't realize this, Xander. He wasn't cleared to participate in any drills until the final week of minicamp. I mean, what's the point here? I mean, I don't get the point. I mean, so you're telling me that guy's going to be ready? He hasn't participated in anything the entire offseason except rehab, and he's going to go into minicamp or training camp here 4 weeks, and he's going to start versus
Oh,
Green
he's been
Bay.
playing. He's been out there.
Well, I heard him say he wasn't actually cleared until the final week of minicamp
Yeah.
for him to be able. Now he's been out this week, yeah. So he's
Yeah.
basically had 2 weeks of practice, and I mean that guy's going to be a starting dude against the Packers on September 6th. Shit, dude.
Well,
And
why are
all
you
this
saying that?
because I know how Howie looks at his draft picks.
Yeah, but Vic Fangio has rolled out Devin White and Zach Bond as your two linebackers every single time in practice so far. So I'm not look. Nakobe Dean has gotten more and more reps each day with the ones. So I think he's going through a ramp up period. There's been moments where they have a one linebacker look on the field, and Nakobe Dean's that linebacker. But I don't think Vic is just going to be like, okay, Nakobe's our linebacker, boom, roll it out. I think he's going to have different players for different looks. When you want a more traditional Mike in there, he's going to go with Nakobe. When he needs cover guys or guys that can get after the quarterback or, the Zach Bond types and the Devin White athletic types, I think he'll go with them. But I don't think they're sold on Nakobe Dean. I'm sure Howie probably is more than anybody, but I don't think Fangio is. I think Fangio is like, look, dude, you got to show me. And that's where we're at with him. I'm very close to being ready to move on from Nakobe Dean. I mean, it's like you said at the beginning of the show, I agree. I don't want a guy that I can't build around. I can't build a defense around a guy that I have no clue coming into every year how many games he's going to play, if any at all. He's had 5 games, Dan, in 3 years.
It's you just can't build a depth chart, let alone
Exactly.
a
You
defense
can't.
around that. You can't even build a depth chart.
You can't. And so we're going to see what happens, how it plays out. I thought it was interesting that they got Trotter in there, Ben Van Sumer. They're getting all these guys in there. And Fangio is treating that position like he has been the cornerbacks, where nobody's guaranteed. Everybody's getting reps with the ones, and he wants to see what he's got. So Nakobe said it today. I welcome the competition. I'm ready to earn my position on this football team. Well, good. You better go and earn it, because if you don't, you're not going to have it. And I think that's how they should be approaching this. Just because Nakobe Dean was this touted guy coming out of college and everybody was all jacked up that how he got him in the 3rd round, that doesn't mean shit to me. What means shit to me is what you've done in the NFL and what you've done since you've been drafted. And that's a whole lot of nothing. Our linebacker play last year was putrid. To go into the season with him as your number one option and him as your plan to get better at that position, I think it's a dumb strategy. And to be honest, they haven't shown me that that's their strategy. There's been a lot more reports of Zach Bond and Devin White being your starting linebackers than there has been in Nakobe Dean. Now, maybe that's just because they're ramping them up, but just going off what I've heard, it doesn't seem like they're that sold on Nakobe Dean. They're more sold on Devin White.
Yeah, no, I get that. I get that same feeling too. Xander, are you feeling more optimistic about the defensive side of the football after the first 10 days? And by the way, tomorrow's pads, there's gonna be more intel, and there's gonna be more of a sample size, especially when you see the big guys going against one another. That's gonna know when practice really starts is tomorrow. Really, that's the first day of training camp tomorrow, when you put the pads on, and you're going to be able to get more of a sense. But are you feeling more optimistic about at least that side of the ball? See, to me, the offense, I think it's just got to work on just rhythm. It's got to work on identity. It's got to work on communication. This other side of the ball has to work on that plus other stuff. They had to work on talent. But are you feeling more optimistic?
I'm feeling a little bit more optimistic. I mean, what I'll say is I'm feeling more optimistic that the young players that we've acquired in the last couple of years, Nolan Smith, Quinyon Mitchell, Keely Ringo, I'm feeling optimistic about their potential, and it seems like from what they've shown so far, they could be good players in the NFL. Where I remain fearful is, how good are we going to be this year? Are you going to be a good enough defense this year to get us to a Super Bowl? Or is there going to be too many Band-Aids you have to rip off? Is there going to be too much of a learning curve? Is there going to be too much of a drop-off from your top guy like Darius Slay? Is the linebacker position going to be too putrid? Are Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis going to be able to pick up the slack? I think they are, but are they going to be able to this year? And that's where I remain fearful on defense, is that things look great if you're talking about 2025. Shit, they look phenomenal. But we got to play 2024, and that's where I remain fearful. But I think Vic Fangio is going to be a good coach. I think he's going to have the best chance to get the most out of these guys. I think so far they've responded well to his no BS style of coaching. I'm not trying to be your friend. It's the old line, and I use quotes from that. That's the only movie you'll ever hear me quote, by the way. I am not a movie person. I don't watch movies. My favorite movie is Miracle. I'll be your coach. I won't be your friend. If you want one of them, take it up with Dr. Coach Patrick. And that's the approach I feel like Vic Fangio has with these guys, where he's like, I don't really give a shit what you want from me. I'm going to make you a better football player. And if you don't like that, then you can go to the bench and sulk somewhere else. But that's my role. And I think he's taken that on strong, and that makes me more confident. But we'll see how it pans out this year. It's going to be a tough swing to say they're going to be top 15 with all these young guns. It really is.
Two last ones for you here. No mention of the RPOs in the Kellen Moore conversation. I mean, what I've heard so far is read options, implementing Saquon more. I personally think this, Zander, that they have acquired Barkley to eliminate the RPOs. And there was something that he said, and I like it, on what he said, and this is Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore said this about how they're going to use Jalen Hurts in the run game. He says, we're going to take Jalen Hurts, and maybe it's going to look a little different, but we have to be smart with the ball with him. We have to figure out plays to utilize his strength and asset to where there's a moments in the game to be able to utilize. So I think they're going to design plays that are going to utilize the same way that they do the RPO in Kansas City, that it's going to be kind of in the toolbox for Mahomes when he needs to pull it out, that he can be able to pull those out when they need him in certain games. But Barkley is going to cover the majority of that, and that's why there's been more read option stuff. If you watch some of the film and you watch some of the clips, you see them practicing that read option a lot. So to me, they're going to try to cover that with Barkley. I mean, that's just one of my takeaways, that there was just no mention of it. But you can cover that with motion, with read option, having designed run plays. I mean, it's really well thought out. My point is, it's not a rip. I think Kellen is trying to figure out how to maximize him to the best of his ability by not overutilizing that run game in him. Like, why would I run him 18 times? How about if I run him 8 times, get the same impact at 5 yards a carry, and yet Barkley carries the other weight in the other part of the mail, and he gets you the 10, 15 carries, but yet both these guys are averaging 5.5 yards a carry. So to me, that's how I see them being able to cover some of that RPO stuff up. Make sense?
It makes complete sense. And by the way, I like it because it's time. And this is what we talked about. One of our first things is it's time to make Jalen Hurts up more of he can play pro style. He doesn't have to every play, but he's capable of doing it. And if you rely on the RPO too long, while I think it has its benefits, I don't know if it's suitable for long-term in the NFL. And I'm okay with Kellen Moore doing that. By the way, let me answer one guy. I get called a communist. Nobody calls me a communist, Big Sales. You're not allowed to call me a communist in the chat. Shooter says, who doesn't watch movies? What are you, Zander, a communist? Shooter, when you stare at your computer screen for 12 hours a day, producing this knucklehead and talking about the Eagles all damn day, You don't get off and go and sit on the couch and turn on another screen. All right. You go outside and you do some shit outside. So don't call me a communist, Shooter McGavin. You don't know me from a can of paint. All right. As Big Soul would say. But back to the point on Kellen Moore. I think it's great because it's time to see Jalen Hurts get to that next step. And that's what, remember the comment I said, sink or swim. And I think he's going to swim, but it's going to look different than it did in 22. And I think that's okay. I think that's a good thing because if you can make Hurts with his skill set, be able to work some of these guys in, be able to get the ball over the middle of the field, and you keep the lethal weapon he has when you need it with the legs and with the extra player and the big playability when a play breaks down. Listen, I think that's a good thing, and I think that creates something that really would be tough to stop for a defense. So I'm fully on board with it. I love it, and I hope it works. That's the thing. I mean, it has to work, but I don't think the RPO long term is the right approach for even a quarterback like Jalen Hurts. I really don't.
Last question for Comrade Krause.
Yeah, Shooter. He's like, I found the trigger point. That's professional trolling. Shooter, I'll give you that. That is exactly how trolling works. So I'll give you that, brother. But don't call me a damn communist, Shooter.
Damn, Shooter, you called him a comrade.
Unbelievable, Phils. Because I don't watch movies. Most movies are propaganda anyway, and they stink, half of them.
Finally here. Hey, man, I really love the fact that Kellen Moore's talking about wide receiver 3 being part of the implemented offense and the attack. He said this, just because you're wide receiver 3, that doesn't mean you're not going to line up wide. Where in the last 2 years, if you were wide receiver 3, Zander, you were in that slot and that was your identity of you being in that Quez Watkins slot. That's not going to happen now. They're moving. You could see AJ in there. You might see one of these new young kids out there on the wide, out there on the perimeter. What I'm saying is it gives you more balance. And if I'm a defensive guy, I'm like this thing. Tell me what you're hearing so far is what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing. Wow. When I watch the Eagle offense line up for the first time, this is not going to look anything like it did a year ago. There's movement. There's motion. Guys are lining up in different positions. There's a different style that they're moving these guys around in. When you're a defensive guy, there's nothing predictable now from what I'm hearing. Now, again, you have to implement it in games to see if these guys are doing this, but the comrade quote is getting to you. I could see it already, Zander. But do you agree? I mean, this is going to look completely different to teams, and you're not going to see the predictability that you saw a year ago.
100%. And I think it's a good thing. Like I said, I'm excited to see how Kellen does. But Dan, I really think he's the right coordinator for this team. I know I sound like a homer, but what's that?
It seems.
What I'll say is when you look at what happened last year and you look at a team that looked like that down the stretch, when you look at that offense, you're like, that's not just play calling. Like something went wrong here that isn't just play calling. You have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. Now it's got a top 5 O-line. Jalen Hurts, who's been playing great ball since he elevated his game. DeAndre Swift. You're like, something's off here. And when you bring a guy in who has a lot of experience in a different type of an offense, it's a fresh set of eyeballs. He seems like he's really going to work this offense together. And to the point on wide receiver 3, you're spot on. I mean, you're moving these guys around. They're going to have a bigger role. But the other thing is, that doesn't mean that they're going to get 80 catches, right?
No,
it just means catch the damn ball when it's thrown to you, and be able to run a route and do the things you need to do to keep the defense on their heels. And I think they'll be able to do that.
See, that's exactly what your last comments on it. You're making them part of the team. Where that wide receiver 3 wasn't part of the team, and if you lost your tight end, I'm glad to hear the things that they're saying about Grant. Because last year, Grant, in the second half of the season, I thought he was a non-factor. That guy's had a great offseason because he's now made a stamp with those coaches where they see him as an important part of tight end 2. That's a good thing, especially when you got a veteran guy back there that you thought was going to come in here and solidify that tight end number 2. He's had a really great offseason so far. So what they're going to do is make that tight end position, I think, more of a focal point. And like you said, it's not that you're going to see 50, 60, 70 targets or catches come out of that wide receiver 3 spot. However, if I'm a defensive lineman or if I'm a linebacker, I've got to account for it now. Last year, I didn't have to account for it. They only had 36 catches. I'm not concerned about that position. Now, if I see, whoa, there's AJ there. What's AJ doing there? Shit, I got to slide back over now again. That's pre-snap stuff in alignment. So alignment and motion, the offense is going to look completely different. And when you go into the games, I know why now, Zander, that Hurts struggled a little bit because it might have been the same plays of a year ago. What they did was they just renamed them.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where he is now. And the terminology he's caught up with, because I'm hearing it smooth. He's got command of it. He knows exactly what he's doing here. It's going to be interesting. Tomorrow they put the pads on, and we're going to find out a little bit more. Encouraging also about how Vic is talking about Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, how these guys are looking, running around out there. I want to see Jordan at the nose. I want to see how he's – by the way, too, I would line him up and beat the piss out of Cam Jurgens every single practice because I got to have Cam Jurgens ready. You put that 350-pound guy on him and you beat that guy up, let me tell you something. That will be the best litmus test for him as he gets ready for Green Bay. Great stuff, brother. I appreciate it, man. Great stuff.
Appreciate it, Big Sills. Any update on your internet? You all good? Your show's going good. The phone is holding strong. Just want to make sure you're all good over there, and you can finish strong here. Another hour and 50 to go in the show.
Hey, listen here. As soon as I find out what we're doing here with the net, and I'm so happy that we're able now to always have like a backup plan. We'll get more to the comments. We'll reset. Don't forget to catch Zander. Birds 365 each and every single morning. You doing anything tonight?
No, nothing tonight. No, nothing tonight.
Tomorrow morning, normal show?
Tomorrow morning, I'll be live. John, we'll have a late night edition of Birds 365 tomorrow after the show with practice. Johnny Mack has some things going on tonight, so he's unable to do tonight. But I will be back live in the morning. Hopefully, I can get John for a brief interview again this morning to preview, and then we will be back live again after practice. So a lot of great content going on right now, Big Sills. A lot of numbers, a lot of views. We appreciate everybody making the show, the channels grow, and we can't thank you guys enough. But big day of content coming up tomorrow.
Absolutely. Guys, hit the like button. Zander, we'll catch you tomorrow. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. That's my man right there. He's a non-comrade, too. Now you know how to get to Zander by calling him a comrade. Not good. Hit the like button. Keep it here, National Football Show.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.